Hi, welcome or welcome back. My name is Yuna, and today I'm going to be talking about all the books that I am hoping to read in May. We have somehow made it through the first third of the year despite all of the fires that keep popping up left and right and the absolute madness that has been the first 4 months of 2026. As always, my TBR is not concrete. It is a very gentle suggestion of the books that I am hoping to get to. I feel like more often than not, I do end up getting to most of the books that I put on my TBR, but depending on things like my mood or the status of library holds or if a Libby hold suddenly is available, things like that, I'll move things around. But these are just the books that I think I'm going to try to read in the next month. I'm looking at the pile of books in front of me and I have a real hodgepodge of genres. There are a couple books here that, left to my own devices, I probably would not have picked up, but they were recommended or talked about very positively by people who I'm mutuals with on Instagram, so I decided to give them a chance and pick them up. So if you ever want to be able to influence what I'm going to be reading or want to throw me your suggestions, feel free to follow me on Instagram. I'm pretty active on DMs and just on my page. But I'm not going to ramble too much. I think I have 15 books total. A bunch of those are little novellas or novelettes, I've heard them called, but there are a bunch of titles I want to get through, so let me just get right to it. I'll start with a book that I recently checked out from the library, and that is The Sound of a Wild Snail Eating by Elizabeth Tova Bailey. This is a nonfiction that I'm really intrigued by, and I feel like it has the potential to resonate really deeply with me on a creature and on a human level. From what I've read about it, it seems like it is a memoir very much about the power of the intimate, close observation of the natural world. So the author, Elizabeth Bailey, at some point ends up bedridden with some sort of illness. I have no idea what the illness is or how long she's bedridden for. But at some point while she's bedridden, she notices and becomes really interested in this common snail that lives on her bedstand. I'm assuming she has like a potted plant or something like that. I think that she ends up very closely observing the snail, and through her time studying it, she not only gets comfort but also learns lessons about life and survival and her place in the broader world. I don't know, I feel like this could be really moving, and if you know anything about me, then you know that I believe very strongly that we as human beings have so much to learn from all of the different teachers around us, whether those are animal teachers or plant teachers, and I think that we have become very distanced from the power and the gift that is observing the world around us. So I'm very excited to get to this. I really hope that it lives up to my expectations. The next book I'm going to talk about is one of the books that I mentioned that I'd previously had no interest in, but I saw a friend on Instagram talking about it, so I decided to pick it up, and that is The Second Death of Locke by V.L. Bovellino. I will admit that I loved The Everlasting so much, and I have had an everlasting shaped hole in my life. That definitely influenced my decision to get this book. I've also seen this described as perfect for fans of the Six Deaths of the Saint and the Everlasting, so here I am. I don't know too much about this book. I don't even know if this is part of a series or if this is a standalone. I don't know if this is a romantasy. I don't know if it's a fantasy with a romance element. I do know that there is a lady knight named Gray, and she serves or protects, I think he's a wizard or a mage named Kier. There's a war going on in the world where Gray and Kier are living, and at some point through some sort of machination, I believe they end up having to protect a child from an enemy kingdom and go on some sort of quest. And there's also an element of Gray being the well of magic in the world, or being tied to the source of magic in this world. The perfect pairing of romance, pining, and sprawling epic fantasy. Gray Flynn has dedicated her life to her mage Kier. She will be his blade on the battlefield, his healer and protector. The deep well of raw power inside her is Kier's to wield. They are bound together by blood and magic, but there is one truth Gray dare not reveal, not even to Kier. When on a quest to protect the child of an enemy kingdom pulls them into a dangerous mission, Gray will need to decide what she's willing to sacrifice to protect her secret. For Gray is no ordinary magical well, and if she dies, all magic dies with her. Sounds like it could be a really good time. I am not expecting this to beat out The Everlasting in terms of romantasy or lady knights, but never say never, we will see. Bopping right along, the next two books I'm going to talk about are books that I am pretty sure I listed in my 2026 priority TBR video. The first is Shark Heart by Emily Habak. This book has such an interesting premise. It follows two newlyweds who have their world sort of rocked when the husband is diagnosed with an illness that will slowly turn him into a great white shark. That might sound like a pretty goofy premise, but I think the book follows the wife mostly and her perspective as she's navigating this change and also thinking back to her past and the way their relationship came together. And from what I am understanding, I think it has the potential to be a really heartfelt and poignant metaphor for the experience of having a loved one, a family member, or a friend who has some sort of degenerative disease or some sort of condition, either physical or mental, that means that their loved ones have to slowly watch them change or slowly watch them disappear. Something like Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or even cancer or dementia. And if this is good, this book has the chance to really, really devastate me just because of personal relationships in my own life. So I'm a little nervous about this. I obviously want it to be good, but I think if it's good, it's really going to make me feel some feelings. So we'll see. Another book that I mentioned in my 2026 priority TBR was Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson. This is another nonfiction and I've just been itching to get to this. It is another memoir, this time by Bryan Stevenson, who is the founder of this organization called the Equal Justice Initiative. The Equal Justice Initiative is an organization that provides legal representation and legal counsel to people who've been impacted by the criminal justice system, and it's also working to try to get rid of mass incarceration in the United States. This book focuses specifically on the case of Walter McMillian, a black man who was sentenced to death, given the death sentence for a crime that he didn't commit. And I think it's about Brian's experience trying to help him through that trial. I think that this is going to be an absolutely infuriating read. I just know that it's going to upset me so much. I mean, how can you not be upset reading about the joke of a justice system, which is really just privatized modern day slavery in the United States? And how are you going to read about that and not be absolutely furious? Incarceration in the United States and the justice system is just ripe with and operates on racial and economic injustice. And I know it's going to piss me off, but I think it's going to be a very important read. And I think that after I read the book, I will probably try to watch the movie of it. I'm going to talk about the next two books together because they're both going to be rereads and they're both by the same author. And those books are Circe and The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I don't know if any of you saw the announcement that Madeline Miller is putting out a novella or a short story or something sometime this year. I'm so excited. Anyway, these are going to be rereads, like I said, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to read both of them in a reading vlog for the month. I think at this point it's been over 5 years since I read both of these books. So I read them probably over half a decade ago, and while I remember the broad strokes of the stories, I don't remember a lot of specifics. The details are kind of hazy. I do remember loving these books so dearly and thinking that they were really strong stories, so I'm a little nervous about rereading them because I'm curious to see if they've held up, and if I don't love them as much on the reread, I feel like I'll be a little heartbroken. If you don't know about these books, they are both retellings of popular figures in Greek mythology. Circe is a feminist retelling about the titular character Circe, who is best known as being this antagonistic figure in the tale of Odysseus and the Odyssey. This retelling follows her life from childhood through her exile on the island where Odysseus meets her. And again, I remember really loving it, but I don't really remember much of what happens in the story. The Song of Achilles, I feel like, is very beloved all across different book spaces, booktube, bookstagram, all of that, and for a good reason. This is a retelling of the story of Troy, and it follows Achilles and Patroclus from the time that they are young children, so from childhood through adulthood, and it follows the lovers, not cousins. It follows the lovers across the ocean to Troy, where things happen. This one is hazy around the edges, but I do think I remember this one a bit more clearly than Circe. I thought these books were so strong when I read them. I am, again, like I said, a little bit nervous to revisit them, but I'm just gonna have faith in Madeline Miller. I'm just gonna have faith that the things she wrote are going to be just as good on a reread. Next is a book that I just talked about in my haul video, and that is 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. This is probably the first contemporary romance I have ever read. I'm trying to remember any others that I might have read, but I think that this might be the first one. Contemporary romance is just a genre that I have no real urge or interest in reading, but I've heard people say that this is a good one for readers who don't generally read contemporary romance. I've heard the feeling of reading this book loosely compared to Open Waters. And Open Water by Caleb Azuma Nelson is one of my favorite books from last year, so I wanted to give this a chance. This book is about two authors who had a short-lived but passionate romance many years ago and reconnect after years of writing about or to each other in their books and rekindling their old romance. I'm going into this open-minded. I don't think that I'm ever going to be a big contemporary romance reader, but that doesn't mean I can't love this book, and I love love, so I'm willing to give it a shot, so wish me luck. Next, I'm going to talk about a collection of novellas or novelettes. I don't know if you knew this, but I'd never heard of a novelette until very recently, but apparently it's a book that is shorter even than a novella, but longer than a short story. So it's something that sits right between a short story and a novella. I'm just gonna say novellas though, because I don't know, I feel weird saying novelettes. So I'm conflicted about talking about this collection because I personally no longer use Amazon, and I encourage people not to support Amazon or purchase from Amazon because it's an awful company with horrible ethics run by an absolute garbage human being. That said, through a kind of convoluted situation, which I'm not going to get into here, I am able to read these books through someone else's account, even though I no longer have Amazon. And so I just feel weird talking about them because if you have a way to read these books without supporting Amazon, then, go for it. But I don't really want to encourage people to be actively supporting Amazon by paying for these books. I'm letting you know that I'm going to read them, but I'm probably going to be breezing through any reviews or anything like that. I don't want to really linger on these for too long, but the collection I believe is called Good Intentions, and this collection is about motherhood or mother-child relationships, I'm pretty sure. The last collection that I had read was Forward or Fast Forward. It was the sci-fi one, and I thought that was honestly pretty mid. So we'll see how I feel about this one, but again, I'm not going to be talking about it for too long. The collection has 7 novellas, but I looked it up and there are 2 authors who I'm just absolutely not interested in reading. I don't want to engage with them at all. So I'm going to be looking at the other 5. I'll probably just let you know in general if I thought it was good or not. But for the aforementioned reason, I'm not really going to linger on the actual individual stories or what I thought about them for too long. Alright, so the next book is another one of those books that I mentioned that I'd had no interest in, but I decided to pick up because a friend on Instagram was very passionate about recommending it. She was raving about it on Instagram, and I found a copy for $1 on Pango, so I had to do it. So we have Shadow of the Fox by Julie Kagawa. Nina, this one is for you. So this is a YA fantasy that seems to be set in a magical Japan or Japanese inspired world. I don't really know much about it, but there is a half kitsune and a samurai who I think is her love interest. Again, this is a book that if I were left to my own devices, I probably never would have picked up, and it is always a little bit nerve-wracking picking up a book based on the recommendations of somebody else because you want to love the book as much as they love it, right? But I have read books based on friends' recommendations and I've absolutely loved them, but I have also had books that I've read based on recommendations and I have hated them. So I'm hoping obviously that this is one that I will love so that I can gush about it with Nina later. I do think it's the first book in a trilogy or a duology. I think that there's more to the story than just this one, so if I enjoy it, I will pick up the rest. Next, I have a book that I talked about in one of my amazing Black authors videos. I think in the second video I talked about it. This is Transcendent Kingdom by Ya Gyasi. I personally heard more about her debut book, Homegoing. I've seen people say really positive things about that, but I'm going to start with Transcendent Kingdom. This book is about a Ghanaian American PhD student who seems to turn to science to try to make sense of some of the things that she and her family are struggling with, like addiction to drugs and depression. It's supposed to explore things like the Ghanaian immigrant experience and the intersection of faith and science. It seems like a book that's probably going to be pretty character driven and has the potential to be emotionally hefty, so I am looking forward to that. I have a couple other books that I'm considering reading and may or may not get to depending on factors, but one of them is Seasons of Glass and Iron by Amal El-Motar. I am so excited to read this book. I am so excited. Amal is one of my favorite authors. She is the author of 2 of my favorite books, one being The River Has Roots and the other being This Is How You Lose a Time War, which she co-authored with, Max Gladstone. I have seen people get online sobbing, just emotionally wrecked after reading this collection of short stories, and I want that to be me. I want to be ruined. I want to be ruined, and I know that Amal has the power to do that to me. And I'm going to be doing this as a buddy read with 1 or 2 people on Instagram, so whether or not I get to it will depend solely on our schedules and whenever people are able to pick up the book. So if it ends up that next month works, I'll read this, and if not, it'll happen sometime in the near future. I didn't even say what this book is about because I'm not really sure. I just know it's a collection of short stories. I'm assuming all of them have some sort of magical quality to them, but I don't know. I don't care. I'm gonna love it. I'm sure of it. If we don't end up doing the buddy read of Seasons of Glass and Iron, then I think I will pick up one of the poetry collections that I talked about also in my haul video, probably Soft Science by Franny Choi. I mentioned in my haul video that this collection is supposed to address a bunch of things and be at the intersection of a lot of interesting topics: Asian American femininity, intimacy and humanity and tenderness in this era of AI and machine-ruled lives, consciousness, and a bunch of other things that just sounds really interesting. So yeah, if I don't get to Seasons of Glass and Iron, I will most likely pick up this poetry collection. Okay, I feel like that was pretty speedy, but that's it for this month's TBR/hopefuls video. And I feel like I've got a whole mix of things going on, from YA to nonfiction to fantasy to maybe romantasy to poetry. I just got a bunch of things happening here, so I'm excited for an eclectic reading month. And like I said, if you want to chat with me or potentially influence a future read or maybe do a buddy read, then just find me on Instagram. Same handle, I'll link it somewhere here, and the link is in the description. And definitely let me know in the comments below what you are looking forward to reading this month. As always, thank you for being here. Happy reading, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. Anyway, let me know what you're excited to read this month